So Nyawe Scano, my name is Jamie Jacobs. My Seneca name is Haudenosaunee, but I reside currently at the Tonawanda Seneca territory. I'm of the Turtle Clan, and I work here at the Rochester Museum and Science Center. Some of the things that I saw here were hundreds and even thousands of years old that were produced and made by our ancient ancestors. So we have things here at the museum that date back to about 3000 BC, everything up until the contemporary time period. So I always heard about our ancestors making clay pots, but I never actually thought about the process that went into making them, and just how much of our culture was ingrained and how much of our people were ingrained into these pots. So what we have here from the collections is we actually have two pots standing here. So this pot here is a Seneca handmade clay pot, and it comes from this site, the Seneca site. We call it the Dutch Hollow site. So this was in existence probably around the early 1600s. So a long time ago, when our people wanted to settle a village, they had to think about a good source of clay because they needed the clay to make these clay pots in order to support the families that are living inside the village. So we know that clay pots were made and that they were, this was done by the females, so this would have been a female art. So that means that when they were settling a village, women had a voice and they had an opinion as to make the decision to settle in this particular spot for the village, because it was up to them to look after the food. These are some of the things that we hear about in the Great Law, is that it says that Sangoya disao, Sagoya tanoko aho. So it says that he highly values our women, our Creator, because of the things that he has given her to do. So the first responsibility was to give birth, or is to give birth, and the next responsibility is to wander around the edge of the fire, which means to look after the food, tend to the food. So we know that this, just to make this pot, it takes a certain ratio of clay to temper, and whatever materials they were using, like I said, that's not the knowledge that the young people would have had. That's knowledge that elders would have had from years and years of experience and years of working with their elders before them. So they would have shown the young people, how to do all this. And so a young woman, she would have been working with her grandmother, she would have been working with her mother, she would have been working with her aunts, and at the same time learning how to make a clay pot. She was learning mutual respect. She was learning how to listen. She was learning more than just making a clay pot. So maybe she was probably being taught ratios or how to grind clamshells for their temper to mix in with their clay. So to fire the clay, we know that to fire a clay pot, that took a lot of heat. So that means that they were burning hardwood. And from archaeological excavations, from fire pits, we know that the hardwood that they were burning they were burning a lot of beech. So again, that's hardwood gathering from the forest. That was a young person's job. It wouldn't have been the old women out there, bringing back these huge, hardwood pieces to help fire the clay. So they most likely would have depended on, younger men. So these younger men now, they have a hand into creating this clay pot. So what they do is they gather, firewood, maybe along with the younger women as well. So again, they're learning more than just hardwoods. They're learning the forest. They're learning how to work together. They're learning collaboration, communal collaboration. So now they fire the pot, and again, we know that firing the pot, that takes time, and you have to pay attention. So you can't just build a fire, throw your clay pot, and walk away. You had to sit there and make sure that that temperature stayed at that specific temperature for a certain amount of time. So it took a lot of work, and it took a lot of collaboration. It took a lot of mutual respect. It took a lot of compassion. It took a lot of working together from all different parts of the village or society just to form a clay pot. So when we see these rims decorated, that's what they represent. Is they represent the grandmother, maybe the past ancestor who handed down all that knowledge to make a clay pot. It represented the young men who went and gathered the clay, harvested it. It represented the young women who were working as apprentices, grinding clay or grinding clamshells or gathering, materials for temper, or even help gathering clay. It represented the men who would help gathering firewood to fire the clay pot. So when we see these rim shirts, we see them highly decorated. But that's usually what they represent, is it represents all that collaboration. So then over here we have a brass pot. So this is an item that was brought by Europeans. With this, there's no more family collaboration to creating this. So you didn't need the young men to gather clay anymore. You didn't need the young women to work with the elders anymore. The women didn't have to have a say anymore about to settle a village, because the clay was no longer needed. So what this brass pot does is that it cuts out all the collaboration, it cuts out all the mutual respect, it cuts out all that communal working togetherness, having that compassion and helping people, because now we can just go to the trading post and buy this or trade for it. So this pot, this brass pot, it cuts out all of that, and with that we see the disappearance of certain responsibilities. We see people starting to value others less, because now they don't have to work together to form this, because like I said, now we can just rely on this, and it gets lessened. So that mutual respect becomes deteriorated over time. So that's what these two objects here represent. So studying our traditions, studying everything that we have, that our ancestors had kept for us to keep going. 4 ceremonies, Haudenosaunee, Kaiwio. They all have a message. They all have something to offer. They all did something the Creator gave us at a point in time when our people needed it the most. So what's next? What can we do now? Well, we keep those things in place and we keep them going. But how can we bring all 3 of them together? How can we add to that to strengthen all those 3 things? So as a changing people, how can we do this?